Welcome to the Mylio Photos coffee break. I'm Angela Andrew. I'm a product evangelist for Mylio Photos, which means that I work a lot on the education and the documentation, and my main goal is to help everyone be successful with this software. So I'm here to answer questions. I'm also joined today by JC Figueroa.
Hello.
He's our customer success lead. So if you've ever had a reason to write into our support team, it's either JC or someone on his team that's been in touch with you. And he is also an avid underwater photographer and recently got back from a trip of a lifetime to the Maldives, did a lot of underwater photography, and of course used Mylio Photos on this trip to keep everything backed up and secure and be able to edit and do things while he was even off the grid on a boat out in the middle of the ocean. So I'm going to turn the floor over to JC, and he's going to talk through what we're calling part 3 of the travel photography series, because he's talked a bit about how he set up and got ready in parts 1 and 2. So if you haven't watched those yet, I'll go ahead and grab those links and put them into the chat for you so you can go back and rewatch those. But now we can see the aftermath of how he accomplished everything during his trip, and also get to see some of his amazing photos. So welcome, JC.
Thank you. How is everyone? Can everybody answer at once? Okay.
Got to turn the mic on all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
How you doing? I hope you had a good trip.
I did. It was an awesome trip. I really enjoyed myself. And I came back with over 3,000 photos, which it takes a while to go through them. But one of the things that I love about traveling with a camera and taking lots of photos on the trip is that when you get home, the trip kind of continues. You get to keep enjoying the experience. You get to relive some of the highlights, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So in the last 2 sessions, we talk about getting ready, how to make sure your photos are backed up, how to make sure that everything makes it back safe. And I am happy to tell you that everything made it back safe. I'm going to share my screen and show you that the folder that I created prior to leaving on the trip, there's Mylio, is completely synchronized with all of my devices. So if you recall, for those of you that have seen the previous 2 coffee breaks, one of the ways in which I organize my photos is based on trips. Every time I take a trip, I create a folder for that trip. And that folder is called trips. It's right here. That's what we're looking at. And if I open that folder, I see all the folders for all the trips that I've taken. And what happened during this trip, the Singapore and Maldives trips, is that as I was taking photos with my camera and as I was taking photos with my phone, I was moving those photos into the Mylio folder for Singapore and Maldives so that all the photos for that trips were already in there. And the other thing that I did as I went along is I started organizing them into subfolders. There's a folder here with GoPro, which was all of the videos that I took underwater while I was diving. There's a separate folders for the photos we took when we were in the Maldives. There's 2 folders for the Maldives itself. One says Maldives land and one says Maldives underwater. So this one's Maldives underwater. This one over here with the fruit bed is Maldives land. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory. The photos that I took underwater go in one folder. The photos that I took while I was topside go in the other folder. And the reason I do that is because this is how I assign categories to my folders. You'll notice that the underwater folder here that I have highlighted in blue, if I look over here at the categories, that folder has the underwater category assigned to it. And if I were to filter my library by underwater, any folder in my library that has that category, all the photos under that folder, all the photos that go into that folder are going to be found when I either search for category underwater or where I filter by underwater photos. I can go over here to all my photos. I can do a quick filter, just category underwater, and I'm only seeing about 5,000 photos versus the 40,000 or 42,000 photos that I have in my library, because these are only my underwater photos. But I didn't have to go and touch every single one of this nearly 5,000 photos. I just put them in the correct folder and Mylio tags them for me. So that is why the folder organization is done for me the way I do it. And that is part of the work that I did during the trip. Now, once I get back, one of the things that I want to be able to do is, people ask you, how was your trip? Did you take any photos? Let me see them. Well, I took 3,000 photos. So going through 3,000 photos or trying to show somebody the right photo from within 3,000, that's just too many. And even though I have them separated into folders, each folder still has a lot of photos. Like right there on the underwater folder, there's 812 photos. I'm not going to go through all of those and try to find the one that people want to see. So one of the first things that I start doing when I come back from a trip is I start creating an album about that trip. And that's where we're going to go next. I'm going to click here on the albums view. Let me double click, go to the top, and I'm going to scroll down and go to the Maldives share folder. These are the photos that I want to share, the photos that I'm proud of, the photos that I think represent a part of the trip that's worth sharing. If I double click on that album, you'll notice that there are some sub albums within it. So one of the things that's great about Mylio is that I can create albums, which are virtual containers, right? I'm not moving or duplicating my files in any way. I'm just creating a virtual collection, but I can still have the advantage of a hierarchy, which is something we all do or should do with folders, but I'm doing it in a virtual container without duplicating, without moving my photos around. So very quickly, I already organized all my Singapore photos. So instead of having, like, if I look at the Singapore folder, there were 514 photos. If I look at the Singapore album, there's only 42 photos. And I can now go and show friends and family or whoever. It's like, oh yeah, here's Singapore. Here's the first day. Our luggage got lost. So the first thing we did is when we went to a mall and bought some clothes, because we've been wearing the same clothes for 2 days, right? And there's a subway system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I can go and very quickly go through a subset of photos without having to look at all 542. The other great thing that's I really like about albums is that an album is the place in Mylio where you can organize things in manual order. Right now, these photos are sorted by date created. So I'm clicking here on the more menu, the three horizontal buttons on the top right corner of the screen is the more menu. And one of the things that I see there is how I can sort my photos. Right now, they're sorted by date created, but if I switch to manual, now the photos are in the order that I want them. And there's one particular set of photos that I wanted in a specific order because they tell a story. These photos were not taken one right after the other, but I want to show them one right after the other. This is a street in Singapore that during the day is just a regular street. Traffic goes by, people walk on the sidewalk, but at night, these streets transform into an eating gallery. And all of these little huts get, the vendors come in, they start making all of this kebabs, and people, there's tables set out, and they do this every single night. This was very close to our hotel. And I thought the first night I saw it, I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then the next morning, I'm like, oh, the street is a street again. So I went through the effort of taking a before and after. I tried to match it as best I could. But being able to sort manually in my album and show those photos in a certain order allows me to present the story the way I want. And this is, again, one of the great things about showing your photos or being able to organize your photos is that you can relive the moment, you can share it with somebody. And there you go. That's the purpose of the album. So I'm going to go now through a little bit of the steps that I've taken to create something like that finished album. I'm going to move from the Singapore album over to the Maldives album. And this album right here has most of the photos that I did on underwater. And what I like to do is I like to go through each dive that I had and show the best photos from that dive. So for example, if let me sort by date created again, because these ones are not manually sorted. Because I took a photo of every dive briefing, I can see, okay, so on day 2, on November 7, we did this dive called Lankan, and it started at 9:45 in the morning. That's when we did the briefing. And then if you look at the album, what follows is all the photos that I want to share or videos that I want to share from that dive. So now I can, in order to go, okay, on day 2, we did this dive site called Lankan, and here's all of us diving. There's my wife in the middle floating in the water. And this is where we first saw the manta rays. And it's really cool. Here's a video of the mantas flying by us. And I can easily share this, right? But how did I get here? Because let me tell you, I took a lot more video and photos than the, what do we have here? 6. So I'm showing 6 representative pieces of media for that dive. I probably took 100 or 200 photos during that dive. So how do I get to that narrow down, only certain photos make it to the album? I'm going to show you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to find a dive for which there's no photos yet, like this Mihiri Beirut is one of the dives that we did, and I haven't gone through all those photos yet. So the first thing I do is it's like, okay, the dive was on November 10 at 4:30. So now instead of going to all my photos or even going to the folder of all my photos, I'm going to use the power of Mylio, and I'm going to go to my calendar view, and I'm going to navigate to that day, 2022, November 10 is when I did that dive. And if I grab this little flag here on the side of Mylio and I start scrolling down, I can make it all the way down to the afternoon, because Mylio is showing me the time of the photos. And there is the slide for Mihiri Beirut. And there's us on the boat right before, let me zoom in so you guys can see it a little better. There's us on the boat right before going into the dive. And then I can see all the photos that I did on that dive.
Now, JC, can I interrupt you for a second?
Absolutely.
So when you were back in the album and you had that picture from the briefing, I believe you can just right click on that picture and say show in calendar, right? And it would have jumped you straight to that date.
Absolutely, you can. Yes, that's one of the great things of Mylio, is that you can say show in folder or show in calendar, live calendar, and it'll take you right there. Yeah, so if I do that right now, it'll do exactly that. It'll take me right to that photo, and I can see, okay, that's the first dive. And then I can see where this dive ends. And as I go through, there's all the photos. Now, one of the things that happened during this trip is that my wife decided she was going to start taking underwater photos. So some of the photos for that day are not photos that I took with my camera. They're photos that my wife took with her camera. And that's for her to organize on her own library. So the first thing I want to do is I want to separate my photos from hers, so that when I go through them and sort them and rate them, I'm not making a judgment call on her photos. That's for her to do, right? How am I going to do that? Well, we have two very different cameras. My camera is a Nikon D7200. If I click on some of the photos, you'll notice that here's the name of the camera. If I click on some of her photos, she has an Olympus TG6 camera. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the filtering option in Mylio, and I'm going to reduce the number of photos that I have to go through by filtering out her photos. I'm going to go to filter, and I'm going to go to a custom filter. Right now I'm in category. Remember how I show you underwater here? I'm going to go to custom. And what I want to do is I want to not include a camera. If I went to the camera category, I could have Mylio only show me photos from a certain camera, which is great. I could do that. I could go and find my camera specifically here by scrolling through and finding my Nikon D7200. But I want to see both my Nikon and my GoPro. And unfortunately, sometimes the GoPro doesn't put camera information. So I have some videos here that I want to see included, and I don't have the right camera information. So instead, what I'm doing is a trick, and I'm getting a little advanced, so bear with me. I'm going to do a custom filter. So just like you can pick a camera, you can go to a custom filter and tell Mylio, I don't want a certain camera. And you can represent that in a number of ways. You can say not camera, or you can just use the minus sign, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to say minus camera, and then I'm going to tell which camera it is, which is a TG6. That's the model of the camera, TG-6. So the moment I do that, watch how some of the photos here are going to disappear. I'm going to hit enter. And now when I scroll back down to that location, some of those photos, like the eel was a photo that my wife took, and there were certain nudie branks, those are gone. So I have a much smaller set of photos for me to now rate and go through, but I still see my GoPro videos here. And notice the GoPro says unknown camera, unknown lens. So I couldn't have included that with a positive filter. That's why I had to do a minus filter. I hope that makes sense. If you have questions about it, let me know. So now that I've narrowed this.
I have a question on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks. Can you actually change the unknown to the GoPro after the fact, the metadata on using this or another app?
You probably can using EXIF tool, which is a tool for managing EXIF data. It's really hard on videos. Mylio doesn't let you change the EXIF data. That's something that we're considering editing, but we're kind of shying away from it because you want that EXIF data to stay pristine. So if you're editing that, you have to be super intentional. But EXIF tool might be a way in which you can correct that. If you just do a Google search for EXIF tool, all one word, there's a whole website. It's a shareware app. There's a lot of developers out there that contribute to that project, and it's a very powerful app. There's a lot of things you can do, but often it depends on how the manufacturer is writing the data to the file and the file format itself. Some file formats, particularly for video, are much more friendly to that than others. So
now, can I ask you a question? You've already created the album.
yeah.
I presume you're going to select some photographs from here and right click and say add to album.
I will eventually.
Can you create the album from here if the album isn't created?
Oh, absolutely. I could go here and say, I want all the photos of starfish that I took. So there's 3, 4. That's actually a starfish. It's called a brittle starfish. So I could just go here and say, add to album, and I can go navigate. So on my Leaf Share, I'm going to create a new album. I'm going to call it Starfish.
And you did that by right clicking. That's how you got there.
Yeah, here, I'll do it again. So I selected multiple photos by holding down the command key on my keyboard. If you're a Windows user, you do it with a control key. Then I right mouse click on any photo. You can also do this on a touch device. On a touch device, you can't right mouse click, but you can go down here to the bottom right corner to the actions menu. And when you click on that, you get the same menu, the same options that you do if you right click. And then I'm saying add to album, but the album doesn't exist. So I just navigate to where I want the album to be. I create a new album, name it spell it correctly. Third time's the charm. Hit create. And now that album is selected, I do have to click continue for the photos to actually move. So once I do that, and let me correct that, for the photos to be added to that album, they're not moving. The photos are still in the folder where they live. But if I go to that album now and I navigate up, there's a new album called Starfish, and the 6 photos that I selected are right there. Did that help?
Yes, thank you.
All right. You betcha. All right. So I'm going to go back. What I want to do now is I want to get rid of all the photos that are just no good. And I want to identify photos that might need a little help before they're worthy of being shown. I prefer to do that in full view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to the first photo, and I'm going to open up the tagging field here so that you can see what's going on. And I'm going to start rating these photos. Notice I have this option called Auto Advance turned on. What Auto Advance does is that as soon as I do something with that photo, like reject it by using a reject flag or assign it a rating or assign it a color label, is going to move to the next photo. This photo is obviously underexposed. There is no subject. I don't think it's a photo that I intended to take. So I'm going to reject this photo. I can click the flag here, or I can use the keyboard shortcut, which is the letter X. If you want to know what the keyboard shortcuts are, you can go over here to the photo menu, go to flag, and here's the 3 shortcuts for flagging: unflag, picked, or rejected. Same with ratings. The numbers 1 through 5 is what corresponds with stars, and same with labels. Now, I'm going to reject this photo, so I'm just going to hit X. It moves to the next photo. This photo, I don't know what I was trying to do. I was shooting with a super macro lens on this dive, so I don't think this is a photo I want to keep. There's nothing that I find appealing here. So again, I'm going to hit X. This next photo is kind of cool. It's obviously a fail because I was trying to take a photo of an eel and I didn't get its face, but I kind of like it. I'm going to keep it. It's not something that I want to show anybody. And for me, photos that I want to keep, but I don't want to be seen, are a 2-star photo. That's just my own personal way of using star ratings. A 5 photo is a photo that I take once in a lifetime. Very few of my photos are rated 5. Either they have a lot of sentimental value, or I think I did a really good job. That's a 5. A 4 are my excellent shots. Anything with a 3 is a photo that I would include in an album, a photo that I would show somebody. A 2-star is a photo that I want to keep in my library for whatever reason, but it's not something that I'm going to show. So that's what this photo is. So I'm just going to hit the number 2, and you'll see that 2-star rating gets added and it moves to the next photo. This photo is meh. I'm not going to delete it just now. Maybe I could crop it later if I'm really desperate for a photo of this particular fish, but I'm going to rate it number 2. The video I'm going to skip because I don't want to look through the entire video right now. So I'll deal with that later. Here's a brittle star. Not very good. So I'm going to start moving faster and rejecting more and more photos. That one's out of focus. That one's pretty good, but I think I need to work on it. So when I find a photo that I think can be a good photo, but needs a little bit of help, I personally use a yellow label. A yellow label tells me these are photos that I want to edit. So that's what I'm going to do with this photo. I'm going to click the yellow label, and I'll come back to it later. That one's out of focus, so I'll reject it. That one's actually might be a better option than the previous one. So I'll hit yellow on that one as well. And then I'll keep going through. That one's probably a yellow label. By the way, yellow is number 7. So instead of clicking the label, I'm going to do number 7. So I've gotten to a place where I can go through my photos pretty quickly and rate them. And just, to me, that's a 3. So I'm going to keep that one. That one's out of focus. So I can very quickly go through these photos and narrow them down to where I don't have to spend a lot of time. I can also do this on my phone. I can do this on my tablet. So what I end up with is a number of photos that have been rated a certain way. And now I can add to my filters and start actually working on the photos. I'm going to change this one to add a yellow label. So what I'm going to do is right here where I'm working, I'm going to add a filter. Let's pretend that I went to all the photos of that dive. I'm going to add a filter for my yellow photos. And if I scroll down to the bottom 4, those are the photos that I want to be working with. Now, some of these I might be able to edit right in Mylio. If I open this photo, I just need to color correct it a little bit. So I'm going to go here to my edit. I'm going to do the auto color. That really made the color pop. It kind of corrected the white balance on the photo. Now, the shadows got lost in there. So let's add a little bit of shadows back to the photo. I think we need to expose it a little bit better. I'm going to add some clarity. And if I look at the before and after, I have a photo that really represents what I saw underwater. The colors really pop. And now this photo belongs in my album. So I can just right mouse click, add it to my album. I'm going to step back from the starfish and put it back in the underwater Maldives album, hit continue, and that's that. Some photos I might want to take outside of Mylio and do more with them. Like this one, for example, I might want to do some noise removal and take it outside. There's plenty of coffee break recordings that talk about editing outside of Mylio, so I'm not going to go into it for the sake of time. But that's what I would do with this photo. I would go and edit it. And once it's edited, then I would give it a rating. This photo is probably going to end up as one of my number 4 photos because there's quite a bit of detail here on the fish that can be recovered. Once I color correct this and remove some of the noise, I think that's going to be a really cool photo of that tiny little fish. It was probably smaller than my pinky finger. So, and once I have the photos that I like, I can go ahead and add them to my album. And now I'm done with that dive. And I go back to my albums. And when I remove the filters now, and I go to that dive, particular dive, Mihiri Beirut, now I have more photos from that dive that I can see. And one of the things that I like to do after I have edited my photos is go back and remove the tags. So this one's already edited. It doesn't need a yellow tag anymore. So I'm going to take that tag off of it. So that the next time I do my filtering, it doesn't come up again. So that's what I do after a trip. Oh, one more thing. I almost forgot. I want to know where these photos were taken. So now that I have rejected a bunch, I'm going to go ahead and ask Mylio to delete the rejected photos because I don't want them. They're just taking space in my library. They're not photos that I want to keep. So I'm going to use the delete rejected photos button. Mylio wants me to confirm that I indeed want to delete 10 files because they're going to be deleted everywhere. And I do. So I'm going to delete them. And the last thing I'm going to do is for all the photos on this dive that I'm keeping, they go all the way through here. I held down the shift key and I went from, oh, let's go all the way there. So videos and photos that were taken during this dive, I want to geotag them. So I have them all selected. I'm going to go over here in the information panel and hit the map. And if I know exactly where the dive took place, I can go right to it. But there's a better way of doing this. Notice that I took a photo with my phone of the dive right before I got in the water. If I open the places information for that particular photo, I have GPS coordinates. This was taken on the boat right before I got on the dive. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to copy that. Then I'm going to apply those GPS coordinates to all the photos that I took underwater. And I simply go to the same location under places in the information panel, and I paste the information. The moment I hit enter, Mylio says, oh, you want me to apply GPS to 73 media? And I say, yes, absolutely. And now when I go to my map view, those photos are going to show exactly where that dive was taken, which was right over here. No, that wasn't it.
Thought it was one of the areas on the left.
Yeah, you might be right. I think it's right there. No, that's a different dive site. Well, it gets better. It gets easier. I can just type the name of the location. So if you remember on the album, I have the name of the dive site as Mihiri Beirut. So let's just go ahead and type that location. I'm going to copy it because I don't think I would spell that correctly. But I can hit enter. It's not finding it. I just got to zoom in more.
Can you enter the GPS coordinates?
You can absolutely edit the GPS coordinates.
No,
I can
enter.
Yeah, like
Oh
copy
yeah,
them to
yeah,
keep-
absolutely. I can. Yeah, that's a good. That's brilliant.
Lots of different ways to get there.
Oh, actually, it tells me the name right there. It's the Ari Atoll.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah,
You just didn't type in the right search.
correct. It just doesn't go deep enough.
Yeah.
Doesn't zoom in enough. But you know, if I were to zoom all the way out on the map and just type Maldives, it would go to that area. And now
Yeah.
as I zoom in, I can see all the places that I went diving. And the more I zoom in, you see that the more detail I get. So if
Pretty
somebody
awesome.
says, where did you see that manta ray? I'm like, well, let's see. It was right here on this atoll. And there's a resort right there. So
That's
I
really
love geotagging my photos because then I can look at the map and not only see the places where I've been, but see all the places where I still want to go. I don't have any photos in this area. Let's go there.
Hello?
Hello.
The other day I was looking at Angela's areas where her photos were,
Uh-huh.
and I noticed she's never been to Canada.
Well, that's actually not true. It was just pre-digital and I haven't scanned them in yet.
Yes.
Oh, good for you.
But yes, I need to do that. Those are all from my film days. The last time I was in Canada, I was quite young, but I do have a lot of pictures and I would love to scan them because we did a big family vacation up to Banff and Jasper, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, I've been all through that. It's gorgeous. I can't say they're like great art pictures, but you know, I was like 13 years old, so
Yeah. Good.
it was fun.
JC, I presume these photographs are on your laptop as you were traveling.
They were both in my laptop and on this tiny little drive that I took. So if you watch one of the previous recordings, oh, my camera's up. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I was just going to say your camera switched off again.
Anyway, what I was going
Oh,
to ask is, once you get home, How do you get do you get those photographs onto a vault hard drive at home, and how do you do that?
It's really, really hard. I turn Mylio on. That's it.
Mylio does it automatically. So if you have a device set up as a vault, it's going to want every photo. And as soon as that drive is connected and he's on a network where he has connectivity, Mylio will automatically start syncing those to any vaults in his system.
As a matter of fact, so when we flew back, we flew through Singapore, and Singapore has incredible infrastructure. They have very good internet connectivity. So a lot of my photos got home before I did, because when I was in Singapore and I connected to the hotel Wi-Fi, it could see my computer back home. I left my computer on at home, and a lot of the photos started coming home by the via the network. Not
So
all of them made it because there was a lot of data, but then when I got home, the rest of them synced.
Okay, and so then once you get home, if you want to look at those photographs, you just go into your Mylio library at home, and it knows where to find them on the vault.
Well, you don't even have to go find them. What I do is I just go and I do the work that I was showing you, right? So for example, if I wanted to edit one of these photos and I wanted to go ahead and edit it with Photoshop, as long as my vault is connected, Mylio knows to go and grab the original file from wherever it is, bring it to my laptop so that it can be open in Photoshop and edited accordingly. So I don't manually have to do anything. I do all of my work within Mylio. There's very few times where I go into the file system and mess with it. You can if you want to, if that's the way you're accustomed to working, because anything that I do in Mylio, like, you know, if I go into the folder view and I decide that I want yet another folder in here for certain types of photos, I can create that folder, and that folder will show up outside of Mylio as well. So go away. If I open a Finder window and I go to my main media, is where my main Mylio vault is. It's right there. And if I navigate to the same folder, so this is my Singapore Maldives folder that is in Mylio Pictures. Inside the trips folder, there is a Singapore Maldives folder, and there's those folders right there. So in Mylio, I can go and say, create a new folder and say Japan, because we stopped, our flight back was through Japan. And I want to have those photos also show up. There's the Japan folder in my hard drive. So the moment I start putting folders in there, in that folder, they'll show up in my hard drive as well. And honestly, I don't think I took a single photo in that airport. I was too tired. But if I did, I would put them in that folder and they would show up in that hard drive. And if I go to my iMac, which has my other vault connected to it, they would be in that hard drive as well.
And so when you go to your iMac, if you want to see the folder on your laptop, you just go there, you work your way on down to those folders. You don't bother to move anything onto your iMac.
No, it's already there. Mylio already done it for me.
Mylio keeps everything in sync, so you can access everything from all of your different devices.
Now, my iMac itself, the internal storage on my iMac is not receiving originals because I don't want to fill it up. But there's an external drive attached to my iMac, which is my other vault. Is this pretty cool Seagate hub drive. It has ports in front of it, so I can connect other drives to it. But that's connected to my iMac. So anything that I do, not only anything that I do, the changes that I made. So all those changes, all those ratings that I just made, those photos that I deleted, Mylio already went to all my other drives, and notice that I have green check marks. That means that Mylio already synchronized all those changes to them. The only one of my vaults that is out of sync is this one called recovery vault, which right now is nowhere near my computers. It's in a fireproof safe. And notice it's missing 3,000 photos. Guess what those 3,000 photos are? The 3,000 photos from the trip, because I haven't synchronized that vault since before I went on the trip. That's the vault that before I left, I put in a fireproof safe as my disaster recovery vault. But the moment I take that vault out of that safe and plug it in, that's all I have to do. I just have to plug it into my computer. Mylio will see it. They'll go, oh, it's missing 3,000 files. Let me put them in there.
Now, if you go to your folders view, can you see the folders that are in your Seagate hub?
Well, my Seagate is not connected to this computer, but
Okay.
if it was, I could. Yeah.
All right. No, because that's the problem I'm having. I can't see what's in my vault. I think I just need to rebuild it.
You probably don't. Send us an email. Use the Mylio contact support form right here.
Yeah, no, I've done that, and actually I've been corresponding with Tyler, so he's been helping me.
You're in good hands.
Good. Yeah, Tyler's sick today, so you might not hear back from him today,
Okay.
but he'll help you out. You probably don't have to start over. There's very few reasons to start over.
Mhm.
I got a question.
Go for it.
Bring
My
it.
iMac was looking, I was checking that out, my iMac and where they're stored on the iMac. And I
Mhm.
made sure they were all going in there in a small form, just like they do on your phone.
Right.
Is that right? That's the way they go on your iMac?
Yeah. So if I look at my iMac here and I click on device quality, I have my iMac set to auto optimize.
Yes.
And what that means is that I've told Mylio, hey, you can use this much space on my internal drive. And Mylio intelligently puts all the thumbnails. You will always have at a minimum every thumbnail in your library on every device. But then, judging by the space available, it'll put previews, it'll put some originals too. You can also force it to be very specific. So on my Motorola phone here, that one's also.
I was going to remove my iMac. Do you think, why are they on iMac at all? I thought maybe you shouldn't even be using that because it's starting to fill up the drive. It's not that big. It's only 1 terabyte.
So what are your devices? What devices do you have?
What devices I have?
Uh-huh.
I'm looking at yours thinking I have an iPad and a phone and 2 hard drives for
Okay.
vaults, backup and stuff. And the iMac, I guess. Oh, and a PC.
Okay. So if you want to interact with Mylio on your iMac, you don't want to remove it. You don't want to unregister. What you want to do is you just want to change 2 settings. I'm going to go to my laptop here. You have to be on the local device to change this setting, but imagine this is your iMac. There's 2 places you're going to want to check. Device quality is 1. And the way I have my laptop set up is I have it set up to auto optimize, but I have also told Mylio to make sure all my previews are on my laptop. My laptop has a 2 terabyte hard drive, so I know I have plenty of space to hold my entire library in preview mode. In your case, if you have a space constraint, you might want to just set your iMac to just thumbnails. And notice that right here, Mylio is telling me how much space I need to do thumbnails and to do a full-size vault. So if I was doing if I was setting my laptop as a vault, it would take 1.2, almost 1.2 terabytes. But if I only do thumbnails, it's taking less than a gigabyte. So why not?
Oh.
The other setting is the device storage. And this is the one that's going to be really important on your iMac, especially if you have a small drive. Normally it's set to be auto manage. And that works really well. But if you want to tell it how much space to never touch, meaning what is the minimum free space that Mylio will not touch, so that when the hard drive gets to only having so many gigabytes left, Mylio will stop putting better quality photos. So that's what this slider is. In my laptop, I say, never use the last 250 gigs of space.
Yep.
So
I'm at that
that's
point right now. I only got about 250 gig left on the.
okay. So what I recommend is that you leave at least 30 gigs. So set this slide, turn the auto manage off, set this slider to about 30, and then set your iMac device quality to thumbnails.
Yep.
And
Okay.
then clear the cache.
We're off topic though.
Yeah, there's some really good explanations on how to do this in the manual. Whoever wrote that is brilliant. And but you can go to keeping your photos in sync in the manual, and all the things that I just mentioned are explained there in more detail.
And Mark has his hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment about the rebuilding a vault. I've had Mylio, I've been on it now close to a year. I've got 103,000 pictures and videos in it. And twice I've had Mylio tell me that I need to rebuild my vault. And both times it's because I forgot I had Mylio running in automatic mode, and I yanked out my SSD from the side of the computer.
Yeah.
So Mylio wasn't very thrilled with that concept, but the interesting point about it is when I plugged it back in, Mylio said, we're going to fix it for you. And the fix took less than 2 seconds, because it turned out that what went wrong was not in the vault. It was on the drive, because I didn't eject it properly. So Mylio will fix your vault if something goes wrong with it. I mean, I guess there are cases where it can't fix it and it has to rebuild it, but
It happens, but
but yeah, for the most part, it's a self-solving problem.
Mylio is incredible at self-healing.
Yeah.
Oftentimes you just have to give it enough time for it to self-heal.
Yep.
So I just want to clarify what Mark said, because sometimes when you plug in a drive, Mylio says it needs to rebuild. And what rebuilding in this instance mean is not that Mylio is going to delete all the photos and bring them back in. It's just rebuilding the catalog in that drive. Yeah. So there's basically an index, a database that tells Mylio what is in this device and what's not. That's how it knows if it's in sync. And if it notices certain errors in that catalog, it wants to rebuild it. And basically what it does is it goes and finds a known working good version of the catalog and replaces it on that device. And it's a pretty straightforward process. Most of the time, if you're having crashes or sometimes even if you're having issues with syncing, doing a catalog rebuild is the fix. It's probably one of the top recommendations that we send from support when people say, every time I plug in this drive, Mylio crashes. We say, okay, well, hold down the option key when you launch Mylio, rebuild the catalog on that drive, and your problems will go away. And nine times out of 10, that solves the issue. So thanks for that comment, Mark. All right.
All right. Any other questions today?
When can I see the first half?
Yes,
I will get the
question.
recording sent to our video editor this afternoon, hopefully tomorrow, or
Okay.
let's see, what is today? Today's Tuesday. So by Thursday, I would think we should have that up.
I was
Friday.
wondering where you were.
I'm sorry I'm late, because I was really keen on the first two and I wanted this third one, but I just got back from a photo shoot in Mexico, and as a result of that shoot, I had a model contact me that wanted to do a shooting with me, and I said, I only do flow posing. And she says, I don't know what that is. And I said, well, we probably need to have a meeting first, because this isn't really what I do for a living full time, and it's my way or the highway. So
I have a quick question on the search funnel, that little funnel thing.
Yeah.
You mentioned you have to, how do you find the stars? I didn't see the stars on those.
Oh yeah, they're in there. Here, let me share my screen again.
I didn't see the stars on the drop-down menus.
Yeah, so if I go here to all photos and I click on the filter and I go to rating,
Oh,
it's
okay.
called rating, it's not called stars. So if I say, show me my 4 and 5
Yeah,
stars,
okay, okay, it's in rating. Okay.
yeah. And here's
Thank
my
you.
favorite photo from the trip.
I love that picture.
It's a great picture.
I was telling the monkey what you can do with Mylio. That was
That's awesome. So Pamela has a question in the chat. She's wondering how it's looking to get support for SSDs to iPad.
Oh, I hope soon because I want it.
It is something that's being worked on. I don't know the
Yeah.
exact status though.
I know it's in the roadmap. So what's happening with development, and take this with a grain of salt because I'm not in charge of that area. We are going to have a refresh release this month, maybe even this week. We're waiting for approval from Apple and Android and all of that. That is just kind of a bug fix and other things, just a small refresh, fixing some of the things that we found after 2.1. But then there will be a January and a March bigger releases. Those will be feature releases with small releases in between. So, and then later in the year, in the fall, is when we'll have another big release as well. So hopefully it makes it in Q1, in one of the releases in Q1. If not, it'll probably be in the fall.
Cool. And Rob has his hand up. Rob, you have another question? Hello.
Yes, I do. I have two questions.
Sure.
So I've been using, to some extent, Topaz Photo AI, which is really mixes a lot of the functionality of their other separate applications.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, so let's say I make a change, use of the denoise and also whatever they call it to make it bigger, which you can also do in other apps.
Right.
Okay, so if I grab it from Mylio and then I process it and then I save it as a new one and I put it in the same folder, then eventually Mylio will see it, correct?
Yeah, if you save it as a new file with a different name, it'll probably be next to it. But what I do, so this image was edited in Adobe Camera Raw and Topaz. And if I show you this photo in the Finder, in the file system, what you'll see is that the main image is JPEG, it's a display JPEG. There's the original file. So if I show you the original file, that's what it looked like. It was lacking color. It wasn't very sharp. And if I were to zoom in on it, you would see quite a bit of noise, especially in the out of focus chroma area. There's a lot of chroma noise underwater. This is the edited version. So what I did is I took that photo to Photoshop. I used Adobe Camera Raw to correct the color, to crop it, to do other basic things. Then I opened it in Photoshop, invoked the Topaz filter, applied the changes, and then saved it with the same name as an underscore display image. And now I don't have duplicate files. I just have the edited version of that file. I can always go back to the original because it's there, but Mylio basically, anything that has the same file name in the same folder with underscore display is going to get stacked automatically by Mylio. So
Right. And
in
then
other
with
words, you're
Lightroom,
working too hard.
Yeah, I haven't done any of that yet. I'm just playing around. But with Lightroom, you can automatically, you have like a something that comes with Mylio that's done automatically. You just drag and drop it.
Yeah.
Right? Without.
Yeah, there's a plugin where you can publish that underscore display. I stopped using Lightroom. I'm only using Photoshop now. And I actually don't really use the functionality of Photoshop itself. What I do is I open things in Photoshop. I open the original. I use Adobe Camera Raw to correct, for the lens, to correct for color and tonality, to do my cropping. And then from
It's
there,
all the
I
same
apply
editing
filters.
tools as Lightroom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the same editing tools as Lightroom. That's correct. So
if you're already going to use Photoshop, and I think I told you guys that I finally shut down my Adobe account, but the Luminar session right after the one you did, Angela, had a guy named Mark Profit from England, and he's released a product called Pro Sizes. In fact, I'm typing you an email right now about it. It's prosizes.com, and it uses Photoshop to make wall sizes of photos, because I do a lot of huge mural size prints. The one behind me, I've made a second one that's almost 8 foot wide.
Wow.
And this thing will chop them into pieces if you want, so you can have sectional pieces. As a result, I have to have Photoshop still, because I don't want to write the scripts to do this automatically. And building those forms by hand just takes hours. It's cheaper to give Adobe $10 a month. But since you have Photoshop on board at that point, one really nice advantage to it to keep the quantity of images down when you get into complicated editing sequences is to take the image from Mylio to Photoshop and then use Smart Object to open any other applications. And that way you've got a re-editable PSD without going back to the original. You can go back to individual steps. So it works out nice. And since Lightroom has to be in the sequence in order to get Photoshop, you've got that transparent path now between Mylio and Adobe. So I did a lot of experimenting, and it really works well.
I like it.
So when you do that, you actually can you use the Camera Raw? There's their plugin for Camera Raw, since it's basically the same thing as Lightroom, or do you have to? How do you get it in Mylio? Or because it's a smart object, you just can take it to Photoshop always to modify.
Okay, I start in Mylio. All my pictures come straight into Mylio. I gave up Adobe a while ago, about 2 months ago.
Right.
So my current Adobe catalog is basically empty. I think there's like 10 pictures in it, and I've only got the standard 20 gig storage that they give you for free, just if I need to move things around, like I take my tablet with me. So what I do is I start in Mylio, and if it's a picture that I know I'm going to need, say Topaz, maybe Luminar, a handful of different tools to really do some different things with it. And then I know I'm going to break it up into a mural as well. I take it from Mylio directly to Photoshop. Yeah, if it's raw, which it always is, because I don't shoot anything but raw. Camera Raw is already there. You don't have a choice. You go into Camera Raw. Yeah. And then when you done out of Camera Raw, it drops you back into Photoshop. So you've done your raw processing at that point, and then you can open. If you right click on that layer, you should do a duplicate first just to be safe. When you right click on the duplicated layer, what I do is I duplicate and then turn off the original. I click the check mark and turn it off. I take the duplicated layer and you right click on the layer and you go to Smart. No, you don't. I'm getting confused here. That's if you've already done it once. You highlight the layer, you go up to filter, and then you pick the tool you want to use for the filter, like whether Luminar or Topaz AI, or I've even had cases where I've jumped into On1 noiseless when I was really having difficulty with a picture. For instance, portraits. I always use On1's portrait plugin, always. It just gives me more flexibility than any of the other tools that I have. The advantage to this is when you come back, you've got layers under, you've got sub layers under that layer that are Smart Object layers, and there's one for each tool you used. So if you come back later on, and in my case, I shot a person in a beach scene, and I went and edited the person in On1, and I decided to clean up my sky because I had noise in it, which I don't really get because I've got a 60 meg camera, but I used to get noise all the time. And when you get noise in it, then I'd jump into Topaz or Noiseless or one of the other tools, clean it up. So there's a layer for each one. So let's say I did the person first, brought up a little more highlight in the person because I was shooting into the sun and they silhouetted. And then I edited the sky and they say, well, I probably brought the person up a little too much. You can go back and right click on that smart object layer where you did the person editing, and it keeps everything in sequence. And it is truly 100% non-destructive editing. Now, when you're done with the working in Photoshop and you hit save, what it does is it saves a PSD back into the Adobe ecosystem. And that's what ends up back in Lightroom. So then when you quit out of Photoshop, you're in Lightroom now. And in Lightroom, you just do an export as with the Mylio display name. And that way you've only got the two files, the original, well, you've got three files, but two in Mylio, the original and the display. And then if you go to re-edit that original again, it's going to find it in Photoshop and bring it right back up again.
Yeah, so basically it's as I thought. First of all, thank you for the comprehensive explanation. That's really helpful. And so really you use Lightroom as an intermediary to do the display so you can see the changes in Mylio, which is good, especially if you're doing Mylio across all your devices. It makes a lot of sense.
The reason I had to do this is I've been a Adobe user for probably 15 years, a long time. I don't even remember how long. And the reason I went looking for a product like Mylio was because I travel a lot to Caribbean islands, and internet is horrible on all of them. And I'd bring my camera back to my computer, plug it in and pull them into Lightroom. And for the next 3 hours, I was uploading to the internet, get it onto my other devices. And I thought, this is insane. Yeah. And internet's not cheap in the Caribbean either. It's not cheap to get high-speed internet where you can get it. For instance, here at the house, I've got a one gigabit line. My house in Dominican Republic, I've got 300 gigabit, and it costs 4 times more than what I have in my house.
Wow.
Wow.
It's horrible. So being at the mercy of the cloud for a large photo collection, and when you have a camera that shoots 60 megapixel pictures, it was killing me. I couldn't get any work done. Yeah. So I found Mylio and thought, I am out of here. Buy Adobe. And now I did wait. Even after Angela says, don't do it, not yet. She warned me numerous times not to shut down Adobe yet. And finally, 2 months ago, I shut it down. And then a month ago, this guy with Pro Sizes shows up. All right, here I go again. Can't shake Adobe.
Yeah, well, at least you can sign on and sign off on that subscription model. So here's the display image that I created. I'm not sure if you were watching while I was doing it, but I went into Camera Raw, I went into Topaz, I applied the denoise and sharpening filter. And what I'm asking Photoshop now is to save a copy of this image with the underscore display, and it's going right back to that folder structure. So notice here is my home directory, the Mylio folder, the Mylio pictures folder, which is my main library, the trips folder, there's that Singapore folder, and Maldives underwater is where this photo should live. So Photoshop, remember, that's where the picture came from. So that's where we're saving the display image. And the moment I hit save and I jump back to Mylio, that photo here in a few seconds, there it goes. It's going to update. Yeah. And what's going to happen is it's going to create a new preview of that photo, and it's going to send that preview to all the other devices. So there's devices that were previously, like my iPad and my phone, were previously in sync. Now they're no longer in sync because Mylio said, oh, you edited this photo, I need to create a new preview and send that around.
Yeah, sorry, I kind of misled things a little bit with the Lightroom link. You
It's all
don't
good.
actually have to go back to Lightroom. I do, because I have other things I do, but you can go from here to Photoshop and back like he showed, and it
Yeah.
does make it easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I've been
Right.
doing as well.
Yeah, you can even go
Can I
directly
make a
into
comment?
Topaz in some instances too.
So I do have a comment, if that's okay,
Of course.
Angela, for time.
Yeah, go for it.
So I've been giving a lot of thought to the universe of images, right? Because I started with digital photography 27 years ago, and until I found Mylio, and then I started paying Lightroom because I got out of the $10 a month is really not important to me. I will no longer go to Starbucks twice a month. And what I realized with Mylio, I have my Lightroom Classic library within Mylio, and I screwed it up. So that's why I need to do something.
Yeah.
But then what you can do with this Photoshop and Lightroom, I use Lightroom Mobile a lot for editing on the iPad because I have simple tremor. And so I basically like the kludgy, the weird method of syncing with Lightroom Classic, which is old technology in many ways with Lightroom, and not going over the 20 gigabyte, right? So the Mylio is great because you can just basically do all that and keep it. And what I like about what you just said, Mark, is and JC, is now I can take these other plugins and through Photoshop, if I understand it, have multiple smart objects, and then I can make changes if I ever want to, say in 5 years, and yet see in Mylio the display copy. Is that understandable?
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Now,
then-
one thing that I
and
have
then-
encountered with smart objects though over the years is that as applications change and morph and operating systems upgrade, those connections via smart objects sometimes cease to work after a while.
Wow.
So that's something to keep in mind. So if I had this happen with, what was a Nick program years ago. I mean, this has been a little while, but they did enough upgrades to their application to where when I opened the smart object, it was failing to load because it wasn't, the application that it was going to had changed so much since that smart object was created. So that's just something to kind of have in the back of your head.
Right.
It's not a forever situation, but it does give you a lot more time to work on those things. And because it's in there in that layered situation, you can always hide that one smart object portion, reopen it in the newer version, and recreate that bit if you have to. So it's still very non-destructive. It's not a deal killer for me, but it is something to be aware of.
Yeah, you
And
need
the
to
other
keep in
thing-
mind that Adobe is a huge company. They're leading this industry, whether we like it or not. If
Yeah.
Adobe says smart objects work like this, and another product says no, it doesn't, the other product is out of the loop, and it's unfortunate for them. Now, if you've kept your original RAW, you can pull that layer back in. It is starting to get a little complicated with Photoshop, but you can pull that original layer back in and rebuild it. Let's say it was Nick, rebuild a new Nick connection with whatever they screwed up and pissed off Adobe.
Exactly.
And that's really important about maintaining your raw images, because you don't know what technology is going to allow you to do, 5-10 years from now. I still have the raw images in Mylio from my first underwater camera, which was a Nikon D70. And if I, go hunting for those photos right now. Oh, what happened to my underwater category? Those are not underwater photos. It must be in the wrong folder.
It's got
I can go
selected too. There's underwater, other, and then the Nikon D70.
Oh, yeah, you're right. That's why. Good catch. There we go.
You actually,
So I can now go back and find some of this original shots that maybe I thought weren't as great a photo, take that into something like Topaz Enhance or Topaz AI, which didn't exist a couple of years ago.
Mhm.
And I can create a better version of that photo because I have the raw. If all I have is the JPEG, then I'm screwed.
You can also take
Yeah.
pictures from older cameras that are typically much smaller, megapixel wise, and enlarge them and then
Ooh,
clean
that's
them up. And you
interesting.
can take an old picture and make it very new very easily.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think Photo AI also works with JPEGs. I
It
had
does.
photos I took in Germany in 2007, and I recently used it to enhance the pixels on it and
Yeah.
make them sharper. I realized that you actually can put focus on old pictures that are blurry.
It will work. It's just you have less to start with, right?
Less to work
More
with. Yeah.
information to
Yeah.
start with. Doesn't look
Yeah,
like
well,
Topaz knows how to decode a D70S photo.
Yeah, looks like there might be a support issue there.
Yeah.
One thing I want to
That is a
mention
bad
about
decode.
RAWs, if you're going to be working with Adobe products with RAWs and your camera is not shooting DNG, which most of them don't. I mean, my iPhone shoots DNGs, but most real cameras don't shoot DNGs. Like Nikon shoots NEFs, Canon shoot the CR series, Sony has the ARW series. Keep the original RAW. One thing I didn't know until a conversation with Rich when 22.1 first came out is that dings aren't all created equal. And although Adobe might be the inventor of dings, it can get you in trouble. So
Yeah.
keep your original camera raw picture at all times. Now, if you need to load, like in my case, an ARW into an editor that doesn't yet support that particular camera I have as ARWs, then you might need to convert through Ding or something else. But try to keep them original because nobody knows that raw file better than the camera that took it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I mean, that's good advice. Just because it's a raw, it's a conversion, right?
Mhm.
And I know Leica cameras use DNG, so they're
do
one
they?
company that does.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
There are
Yeah,
a
they
few.
do.
Even though they do, I don't like when you import into Lightroom as an example. I know those of us on Mylio don't really do that, but on the import into Lightroom, there's an option to convert to Ding. Don't do it, even though you're already Ding, because Leica's Ding might not be the same
It's a
as
special
Adobe.
flavor. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So try to avoid Adobe's dings unless you have to use it.
So a not so secret is that the Mylio Smart Previews are actually, for raw images, are actually DNGs.
That makes sense.
But there is a special flavor of DNGs. You
Yeah.
won't be able to open them outside of
Yeah.
Mylio.
Yeah, that makes sense, actually.
Well, that's how we can preserve that pixel density and be able to do a lot of edits for it. This is interesting. So other Topaz products can decode that D70, but not Photo AI.
That's very interesting.
Well, it's a new product. They might not
I
have
get
gotten
to email support for a change. Yay.
off. Must make you feel good, JC.
It does. It does. It's always the other way around.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. I have a 15-year-old camera. It was probably a Canon throwaway that it was support, but it was a JPEG. So probably JPEG is JPEG as opposed to a proprietary RAW.
Yeah, that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So I have to bow out because I have another meeting I have to attend, but this was really fun. I hope what I show was helpful. And if you have any questions, either wait till the next coffee break or you can send us an email or use the in-app contact support and we'll be there to help.
Well, thank you so much, JC, for joining us. This was excellent. I hope everybody enjoyed it and got something out of it. I want to remind you that we will have coffee break next week. We've got Elia Liccardi joining us. He is the co-founder and CEO of Radiant Photo. He's also
Oh, wow.
an internationally acclaimed travel photographer. His work is amazing. So we're very lucky to have him joining us next week. The following week, we will be off for Christmas holidays. So, and then the week between Christmas and New Year's, there will be no coffee break, and then we'll start up the following week after the new
You
year.
guys need a vacation too? Wow. Unbelievable.
We like to take time off every now and again. We got to go take pictures sometime, right?
I'm looking forward to Radiant. I finally just bit the bullet and bought it.
Awesome.
It's a convenient starting point. I don't use it for finishing anything yet, but maybe. But to get a good starting point, it's pretty spectacular. It really is.
It really is. Or just to like kind of brush up some of the old images, or
Mhm.
I'm having a lot of fun with it. And you were talking about using the portrait tools and on one. I started experimenting with a shoot that I did a couple of weeks ago with some portrait editing using just Radiant, and I love the results.
Yeah.
And it gives a lot of those same controls that I think you might be used to in the on one portrait tools, because that's another great option.
Yep.
But it's a lot of fun. The only thing I wish Radiant had was the rotate picture and just like the upright straightening tools. If it had that, I probably wouldn't need to touch anything else.
My only
Well,
sorry.
What was that?
I was just going to say that Rich has a good YouTube video on Radiant that came out in the last few days. I started watching it. I still need to get through it. It's well over an hour.
Yeah.
He's a master of many, I noticed on YouTube.
He is. He's a pretty smart dude. We're lucky to have him around. So
Yeah.
Yeah, there was one I know that just came out. I think I saw the link for it yesterday through Photo Focus, that he did a big video on Radiant. So I need to watch that one too. So,
Yeah,
all right, well,
I'd like to see it too.
Well, go check out Photo Focus. There's some more good stuff there too.
Will do.
I think that's about it for today. Are there any other questions before we close?
No, thank you. Appreciate it.